Okay, so imagine a world where just a handful of years can completely shatter everything you thought you knew. Redraw maps, change history.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible how fast things could shift back then. And it really propelled the world into, well, the two biggest conflicts of the 20th century, World War I and World War II.
Exactly. And that's our focus for this deep dive, those huge global wars.
Yeah.
But specifically looking at their often kind of overlooked impact on India.
And that's right. We're diving into some historical accounts, some excerpts, really trying to give you a structured way to see these really complex events.
Yeah, our mission is basically to pull out those key historical nuggets,
Yeah.
connect what was happening globally to India's unique experience, which was, let's face it, forced upon them initially, but ultimately transformative.
And offer you a bit of a shortcut, right? To understanding this really pivotal time without getting totally bogged down in like endless details.
Okay, let's jump in. World War I kicks off in 1914. To really get it, we need to understand the global picture first. What were the big pressures building up, especially with all these new inventions changing things?
Well, those inventions were a huge driver. You had this massive boom in industrial production late in the 19th century. Mechanization just took off.
Right.
And that created two really urgent needs for European powers. One, they needed way more raw materials for their factories.
Okay.
And two, they desperately needed new places to sell all the stuff they were making, new markets.
Ah, so that fuels the whole empire building thing.
Exactly. It led straight into intense imperialistic ambitions, basically a fierce competition who could grab the most colonies, control the most resources, and that brewed a lot of tension, warlike tension.
And that tension then spills over into, well, it sounds like a crazy arms race. Was it just about building armies, or did it create this mindset where war felt, I don't know, inevitable?
It was both, really. You had major players like England, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia, France, Italy. They were already kind of forming these rival groups.
Right, the alliance.
Yeah, and the competition to build up military strength, naval strength, it was just relentless. Plus, they were churning out more and more destructive weapons. It created this political climate that was just, buzzing with tension, like a powder keg just waiting.
And then the spark, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. In Serbia, our source uses some strong language, calling the killer a Serbian maniac. How does one event like that just blow everything up so fast?
It's pretty stark, isn't it? Shows how quickly things escalate when the underlying tensions are that high. Austria blamed Serbia, basically, the kingdom itself.
Right.
So Austria declared war on Serbia, then Russia jumped in to back Serbia, and just like that, boom, the alliances clicked into place. Germany sided with Austria. England eventually came in when Germany invaded neutral Belgium.
So the two sides form up. We've got the Central Powers, Germany, Austria, Turkey, Bulgaria, and against them, the allied nations, England, France, Russia. Italy joins later, and then America right near the end.
That's the lineup. And it wasn't just fighting on land either.
No, you mentioned that naval battle, Jutland. 1916, Germany lost that one.
They did. A significant naval defeat for Germany. And the whole thing finally ground to a halt with the Treaty of Versailles in 1918.
Right. And after all that destruction, there was this idea, we need to stop this from ever happening again. That led to the League of Nations, didn't it? Pushed by President Wilson.
Exactly. Wilson was a real idealist, pushing for this international body to keep the peace. But here's the catch, and it's a big one.
What's that?
Real global cooperation. It needs everyone pulling together, right? But the League excluded Germany, Austria, the defeated nations, and ironically, America itself, Wilson's own country, never actually joined.
Seriously, why not?
Politics back home, essentially. So you ended up with England and France basically running the show. It shows, I think, that you can't just impose peace. Everyone has to buy in. It was flawed right from the get-go.
A noble idea, maybe, but doomed from the start. Okay, so while Europe's trying to figure out its future, let's shift focus back to India. How did India, a colony with no direct quarrel in Europe, get so deeply pulled into this massive war? Our sources say it was totally forced, no choice given.
Classic colonial situation, really. India was basically seen as this enormous resource depot for the British war effort.
Deep resources.
Money, food, clothing, supplies, you name it. The sheer amount of money is staggering. The British government in India sent something like 19 billion rupees to Britain in just 1 year, 1919-20.
19 billion in 1 year. That's unbelievable. A huge burden on India.
Absolutely crippling. And that's just the financial side.
What about the people? Our sources talk about over 1 million Indian soldiers fighting overseas. France, Mesopotamia, that's a massive human cost, often forgotten.
It really is. Over 1.3 million soldiers and support staff, actually, sent far from home fighting someone else's war. And incredible bravery, too. 17 Indian soldiers won the Victoria Cross.
Wow. So huge financial drain, huge human cost. What else was India forced to provide?
Industry, too. Even though it was still developing, India supplied tons of war materials. Ammunition, weapons, textiles, jute for sandbags, tents, even small ships, timber, railway tracks.
Railway tracks.
Yeah, by 1918, about 1.4 billion rupees worth of weaponry and ammo alone had come from India.
And there's a specific story about Tata Iron and Steel Company, TISCO. They made miles of railway tracks.
1,500 miles worth. Think about that distance. Absolutely crucial for moving troops and heavy guns around on the battlefield.
Incredible.
Even the Viceroy, Lord Chelmsford, visited TISCO in 1919. He actually acknowledged how vital India's contribution was to Allied victories in places like Egypt, Palestine, East Africa. He praised India's potential.
Interesting acknowledgement. So linking this back, what was the overall impact on India's economy during the war? You said it boosted some industries?
It did, yeah. Things like iron, steel, coal mining, they definitely saw growth. Even motor transport picked up a bit. But there was a serious downside.
Which was?
Exports dropped sharply. A loss of around 33 crore rupees, which was a lot back then. Prices for farm goods went down, but prices for industrial goods went up.
So farmers suffered, but consumers paid more.
Right. And crucially, there was a massive shortage of food grains inside India. Why? Because so much was being shipped out to England and the Allies.
Which means food prices in India must have
skyrocketed, exactly. It hit ordinary people really, really hard.
What about the military side? Did the war reveal anything about India's own military setup?
Oh, definitely. It was a harsh reality check. It showed just how far behind India was in terms of modern weaponry, aircraft, mechanized stuff, even basic things like medical facilities and training.
A real wake-up call, then. Did the British do anything about it?
Well, they set up a committee, to look into reforms. Promises were made around 1917, things like posting Indian soldiers without discriminating based on caste or religion, setting up an Indian military academy like Sandhurst in Britain, expanding the Air Force Foundation.
It sounds like they were acknowledging the contribution, maybe, or just realizing they needed a more modern force.
Probably a bit of both. But it showed things were shifting, at least on paper.
So you've got this backdrop of economic pain, some hints of military reform. How were Indian political leaders viewing all this? You mentioned Lokmanya Tilak had a surprisingly positive take.
He did, which is interesting. He used his newspaper, Kasari, to argue that India should cooperate, believing it would strengthen India's position and help its future. He seemed to be playing a longer game, acknowledging India's strength.
That's quite different from someone like Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, right?
Completely different.
Yeah.
Nehru was very clear. He famously said this was not the war of India. Full stop.
Because India had no say?
Exactly. He pointed out India was just a colony, dragged along by Britain. India had no beef with Germany or Turkey. But still, it sent over 1 million soldiers, paid billions, all while being impoverished itself. A very sharp critique.
And amidst all this, there was that awful Komagadamaru incident. Can you remind us what happened there? It sounds brutal.
Yeah, it was tragic. A ship carrying Indian migrants, mostly Sikhs, tried to emigrate to Canada. They were refused entry based on discriminatory laws.
Okay.
Then the ship was forced to return to India. When it landed near Calcutta, British officers basically opened fire on the passengers who were protesting or disembarking. About 30 Indians were killed.
Just shot. For trying to emigrate and then returning.
Yes. It caused a huge public outcry in India, a real symbol of the injustice and, frankly, the brutality of colonial rule.
It really highlights the power imbalance. What about the Indian National Congress? Did they have specific demands regarding defense?
They did. They were pushing for things like self-defense education for Indians, cutting military spending, recruiting Indians into higher officer ranks, and setting up an Indian Defense Academy. They also wanted Britain to share the defense costs.
Makes sense. But the British weren't really listening.
Not really. Their policies were consistently focused on Britain's own interests, not India's.
Now, something else our sources point out is this contrast in nationalisms. Aggressive German nationalism versus what's described as a more magnanimous Indian nationalism. Can you unpack that?
It's a really important distinction. German nationalism, especially later with the Nazis, was about conquest, racial superiority, Lebensraum, and ultimately the horrific genocide of Jewish people.
Right. Aggressive, expansionist, racist.
Whereas Indian nationalism, certainly as articulated by the mainstream movement, was fundamentally about achieving independence from colonial rule, establishing democracy, and crucially, creating a nation where people of diverse religions, races, castes could coexist.
So focused inward on freedom and unity, rather than outward on conquest.
Exactly. And even looking outward with solidarity, sending aid to other places fighting oppression like Abyssinia, Spain, China. It's a very different philosophy.
A powerful contrast indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, so WWI ends, League of Nations is flawed, and somehow the world stumbles into an even worse conflict just over 20 years later. World War II, 1939 to 45. How did those seeds from WWI, like the Treaty of Versailles, lead to this?
Well, the failure of the League of Nations was definitely a huge factor. It just couldn't stop aggressive nations. And then you have Hitler rising in Germany. A major part of his appeal was railing against the humiliation of the Versailles Treaty.
So he wanted revenge, basically.
Revenge and to restore German power. He immediately started rebuilding the military, breaking the treaty's terms. And here's a complicated bit.
Go on.
The rise of Soviet Russia also made Britain, France, and even America pretty nervous. So for a while, they kind of looked the other way as Hitler got more aggressive.
Why would they do that?
The thinking, or perhaps the hope, was that a strong Germany might act as a check on Soviet communist power. A really dangerous gamble, as it turned out.
A massive miscalculation.
Yeah.
And Hitler just kept pushing.
Relentlessly. He took the Sudetenland region from Czechoslovakia in 1938, then attacked Poland in 1939. Poland was allied with Britain and France, so that was the final straw. Britain declared war.
And then Germany just blitzed through Europe.
Astonishingly fast. Denmark, Norway, Holland, Belgium, France. They all fell very quickly. You had that dramatic evacuation of British troops from Dunkirk in May 1940. Churchill had just become prime minister.
A really low point for the Allies.
Absolutely. Then Hitler made another huge mistake. He broke his pact with Stalin and invaded the Soviet Union in 1941.
Which brought Russia fully into the war on the Allied side.
Yes, and ultimately led to the Battle of Stalingrad, a brutal, massive Soviet victory that really turned the tide against Germany on the Eastern Front. It eventually led to Hitler's defeat.
But the war wasn't just in Europe this time, was it? Japan got involved.
Right. Japan joined the Axis powers Germany and Italy. In December 1941, they launched that surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii.
Which brought America into the war.
Instantly. And suddenly, the war exploded across Asia and the Pacific. Japan conquered the Philippines, Myanmar, Burma, Malaya, Singapore. They even pushed right up to India's border in Assam.
So it became a truly global conflict. How did it finally end?
The final devastating chapter was in the Pacific. The U.S. dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The destruction was unprecedented. Japan surrendered shortly after on August 15, 1945.
Just incredible, the scale of it all.
Yeah.
Before we move to India's role, can we quickly touch on those ideologies, fascism and Nazism, what defined them?
Sure. Fascism, mostly associated with Mussolini in Italy, was fundamentally anti-democratic, anti-liberal. It glorified the state, promoted aggressive nationalism, and saw war as, well, almost a positive thing.
And Nazism?
Nazism was basically a particularly virulent, racist form of fascism. Hitler and the Nazi Party added the element of extreme racial ideology, the idea of the Aryan master race, and of course the systematic, state-sponsored genocide of European Jews of the Holocaust, built on hate.
Horrifying. Okay, so back to India. Once again, Britain is at war, and India, as its colony, gets dragged in. Where did Indian soldiers fight this time?
All over, really. North Africa, Egypt, Iraq, Iran, Greece, and closer to home in Myanmar and Malaya fighting the Japanese. Again, forced into it.
And the exploitation of resources, our source called it heavy exploitation. Was it worse than WWI?
Oh, much worse. More systematic, more expensive. India was like a giant supply depot for the Allied war machine. Everything from dynamite and tanks to ship repair materials, steel, railway parts, food, textiles, medicines, ammunition.
It's a massive drain again.
Huge. The British even set up new factories in India specifically to produce war supplies. It was total mobilization of the Indian economy for Britain's war.
And Indian soldiers continue to distinguish themselves. More Victoria Crosses.
Yes. 31 Indian soldiers and officers won the Victoria Cross in WWII. Incredible bravery. Our source mentions two by name from Maharashtra Naik Yashwant Gaj and Sepoy Namdarao Jadhav.
It's important to remember those names. And India even helped with post-war rehabilitation.
It did, contributing to recovery efforts in places like Malaya, Indonesia, China, showing perhaps a growing sense of its own place on the world stage, even amidst the struggle for independence.
So what was the impact of this war on the average Indian person? Worse than WWI?
Definitely intensified the hardship. You had forced recruitment again, which was deeply resented. More taxes hitting trade and industries. Prices for essentials went through the roof. Inflation was rampant. And after the war boom, there was industrial recession leading to unemployment. It was tough.
And all this suffering, how did it connect to the freedom movement? Did it fuel it?
Absolutely. It galvanized people, this level of exploitation, the hardship. It brought people from all walks of life, workers, farmers, the middle class, into the national movement, demanding an end to British rule more forcefully than ever before.
And the Indian National Congress. How did they react when Britain declared India was in the war this time?
They protested strongly. Viceroy Linlithgow just announced it again, without consulting anyone in India.
Same story as WWI.
Pretty much. The Congress took a really principled stand. They said, look, we oppose Hitler and Mussolini's dictatorships, but we also oppose British colonialism. If Britain claims it's fighting for democracy, then grant India its freedom now.
A powerful challenge. What happened when Britain ignored them?
The Congress leadership, including Gandhi, refused to cooperate with the war effort. They launched movements like the Quit India movement in 1942. It was a major act of defiance.
But not everyone agreed with non-cooperation.
Right.
What about Subhas Chandra Bose?
Right. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose had a different strategy. He formed the Azad Hind Fauj, or Indian National Army. His idea was to actively fight the British, leveraging the war situation, even seeking help from Britain's enemies, like Germany and Japan, to achieve independence. A more militant approach.
So, different strategies, but the same goal, independence. The war also highlighted individual acts of courage and service, didn't it? You mentioned Dr. Kotnis.
Yes, Dr. Dwarkanath Kotnis, an amazing story. An Indian doctor from Solapur, sent by Nehru as part of a medical mission to China during their war with Japan, even before WWII fully erupted globally.
To help the Chinese soldiers.
Exactly. He worked tirelessly under incredibly difficult conditions and tragically died there from illness. He became this huge symbol of India-China friendship and solidarity. There was even a famous film made about him.
Dr. Kotnis Kiyomar Kahani. Real powerful story. And who was the other figure you mentioned? Manekshaw.
Sam Manekshaw, yes. He showed incredible bravery fighting the Japanese in Myanmar during WWII. Got hit by, I think, 9 bullets, miraculously survived, and was awarded the Military Cross.
9 bullets.
Yeah. And of course, he later went on to become independent India's first field marshal, famously leading India to victory in the 1971 war. A true military legend forged in WWII.
Incredible resilience. So bringing it all together, Britain wins WWII, but what state was it in?
Victorious, yes, but utterly exhausted. Economically devastated, huge loss of life. The empire was becoming unsustainable.
And their view of India had changed.
Drastically. They realized India wasn't just this passive colony anymore. Indians were actively demanding freedom. They weren't meek and submissive, as the source puts it. And India was no longer seen as this bottomless pit of profit. The cost of holding on to it was just too high.
So the war, in a way, sealed Britain's decision to leave.
It was a major, major factor. The combination of Britain's weakness and India's strength, its unified demand for independence, made the end of the Raj inevitable. They decided it was time to go home.
Okay, looking at the big picture then. These 2 world wars, the cost globally was just immense, wasn't it? In lives, in wealth.
Almost unimaginable. Tens of millions dead, economies shattered, entire continents scarred.
But out of that devastation, especially after WWII, came a renewed effort for global cooperation. Learning from the League of Nations' failure.
Definitely. There was this collective sense that, okay, we cannot let this happen a third time. That led directly to the creation of the United Nations in 1945, designed to be more inclusive, more effective than the League.
And has it been?
Well, it certainly had its challenges, but it has provided a crucial forum for dialogue and prevented conflicts on that same global scale, arguably. And India, right from the start and continuing today, has played a really significant role in the UN and other international bodies.
So this whole deep dive, it really shines a light on India's journey through these wars.
Yeah.
Not just a passive victim or resource pool, but...
Far from it. From being forced in, exploited, yes, but also showing incredible bravery, developing its own industries, formulating strong political resistance, and ultimately using the situation to accelerate its own path to freedom.
Yeah.
It's a complex, pivotal story.
It really is. And maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with. It's striking how these utterly devastating global conflicts, which caused so much suffering in India,
Also, maybe unintentionally, forged something within India, a stronger sense of shared identity, resilience, a unified purpose that ultimately helped build the nation. It seems the crucible of war, paradoxically, helped pave the way for India's unique emergence onto the world stage.